Everything that we need is here in the earth. The winged ones know it. The wildflowers know it. We humans struggle. But God provides what we need, our daily bread, gifted to us each day. But our culture, our economy, our whole worldview is based on never having enough, right? That's how capitalism works. We always have to want and buy more. So we climb, and we save, and we work, right? And we think these things are evidence of morality, that our 401k translates into virtue, and that the cars we drive and homes we own reflect blessing. Do the ravens gather and gather and gather? No, but God gives them plenty to eat. Do the wild... Sure, I can say it again. Y'all need to hear it again. Siri thinks you do. Do the ravens gather and gather and gather? No, but God gives them plenty to eat. Do the wildflowers work long and hard hours? No, but God clothes them with beauty that surpasses anything that we can buy. We have created for ourselves a perpetual state of need. And we've isolated ourselves as humans from the rest of creation. Creation that God calls good in our sacred story. Creation that Jesus points to as our teacher in today's reading. Creation that gives itself in relationship with us, not only fruit and vegetables and meat and grains filling our plates, but tree life that is holding each one of you up today as you sit in these pews. Tree life helping you follow along in the bulletin, or maybe fan yourself if you need to. Our sanctuary is anchored by the heart of a Georgia mountain right here, pink Etowah marble that holds us in our sacred ceremony of baptism. Plant life woven into carpet and clothing and cushions. Light streams in through the glass. Melted sand that was broken down over millions of years in the ocean before finding its way to this space, into our windows. Everything around us and under us comes from creation, from life. Even the plastics and synthetic materials, if we go back far enough, it may give you a headache, but we can find a natural origin, right? But we're trained not to see it. We're trained to see objects for our use, not as living beings, certainly not as teachers. And I wonder if Jesus were here, how he might adapt his teachings about the wildflowers and the ravens for us. Do the birds gather into bigger and bigger storehouses? No, and what would happen if they did? If some took more than they needed while others went hungry? Would we call that wise planning? If the squirrels didn't get enough because of the ravens hoarding, if they couldn't do their work of eating and digesting and replanting throughout the woods, if this generation of ravens had so much, but once their storehouses ran out, there was not enough new growth for their children and grandchildren, would we call that virtue? What about the wildflowers? Do they work long and hard in the meadow? No. And what would happen if they spent their time straining to improve themselves, stretching their leaves to a breaking point to stand taller, grow higher, photosynthesizing extra hard to get the very brightest pigment possible? I don't know if that's how photosynthesis works. I'm sorry. To be the most beautiful, most special flower in the field, forgetting to drink deeply, to spread roots down, to befriend their flower neighbors, and then blowing away alone, stretched thin. Would we look at that flower as the model of hard work, to imitate. I am learning, with the help of Native neighbors and stories and wisdom, that Mother Earth, God's good creation, gives us everything that we need. Everything enough for all of us to live full and abundant lives. But we have commodified her, right? Chopped her up into plots of real estate, cut into her heart, and sold her to the highest bidder, poured industrial waste into lakes, poisoning sacred waters like Onondaga Lake. Beyond the incredible damage that European settlers did to Native American nations and families through hundreds of years of active warfare, genocide, and attempted erasure, they've also broken our relationship with the land. It's broken for all of us, right? We don't even think about it except as some kind of abstract concept, the land of the free, the home of the brave. Our culture has taken and taken and taken with no thought to our children, to our grandchildren. We have worked hard and worked to be better and more important, but we've missed the beauty of the abundant life that we already have everything we need for. Kwawiltekin elder Maria told me about the Native perspective on the natural way, and that's what our second commitment in our land acknowledgement is about. She says it's a worldview and a way of living that is based not in the accumulation of wealth or prestige, but in relationships with nature, with each other, with ourselves. And these relationships are all tied up in each other. She talked about caring for the earth and receiving gifts from the earth of pure, whole foods that nourish our bodies. She talked about sharing that nourishment and taking care of the whole community, every member. She said, we can learn so much from Indigenous communities about the connection we used to have to Mother Earth and to each other. And we can have it again. We can have it again. Her generosity astounds me. Cherokee author and theologian Randy Woodley calls it the harmony way. He emphasizes the importance of restoring the relationships that exist among creator, humans, animals, and the earth. The harmony way is rooted in respect for all, in generosity and hospitality, in a lifestyle of gratitude, especially to the earth. He writes that the harmony way cares about the most marginalized, because how we treat those who are most in need reveals the heart of who we are. He compares the harmony way with the concept of shalom in the Hebrew Bible. He's a Jesus follower too. Robin Wall Kimmerer is an author, botanist, and Potawatomi descendant, and her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, has been a life-altering experience to read for me personally. I highly recommend it. As she writes about Indigenous wisdom and scientific knowledge and the incredible beauty and overlap at that intersection, she talks a lot about reciprocity. The earth gives to us, and we have something to give back to the earth. Each member of creation has a gift, and those gifts come with responsibilities. Water has the gift of life and the responsibility to nourish plants and make up most of our animal bodies. Plants have the gift of photosynthesis, whether I understand it or not, and the responsibility to provide nutrients, not just for themselves, but for all the rest of us too. Clean air for all creation. These gifts invite us into a relationship of reciprocity and respect. Kimmerer gives a more specific example that I love of reciprocity. It's been found, apparently, that there are enzymes in the saliva of buffalo that actually promote and enhance, they fertilize the growth of prairie grass. So the grass feeds the buffalo, and the buffalo feeds the grass. Reciprocity, right? What is our gift as humans? How do we participate in this kind of reciprocal relationship with the world? The natural way, or the harmony way, or shalom, whatever you want to call it. One unique gift that we have is our ability to express gratitude. And so maybe that's where we can start, at least. Gratitude for the gifts that are all around us, the gifts we've been trained not to see. Gratitude for what we already have and who we already are. Gratitude is at the root of God's table, after all. Eucharist is just the Greek word for thanksgiving. Our central act of worship as Jesus followers is the people gathered in gratitude for the bread and the wine, the gifts of Mother Earth, and gratitude for the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, who gives himself so that we might find our way to right relationship with God, with each other, with the world. We give thanks for gifts of grace that draw us into relationship, gifts that come with responsibility. And it's not lost on me. I hope it's not lost on you that our settler ancestors who forced conversions and stripped native identity in the name of Christ tried their best to strip away a worldview that had much more in common with the gospel of Jesus than their own. Reciprocity, gratitude, harmony mark the way of Jesus, not violence, power, whiteness. Christianity is responsible for so much harm, and however repentant we may be, we can't and shouldn't just try to combine it with indigenous wisdom and move on, right? The natural way requires relationship, reciprocity, sharing of gifts, and we've got a lot of work to do to find our way back to relationship with the world and with our native neighbors. It sometimes seems impossible. Robin Wall Kimmerer writes about the industrial wasteland that has taken over Onondaga Lake, a sacred site of the Onondaga people in Syracuse, New York. It was taken over by the state, breaking legal treaties, and it was used as a dumping ground for a slimy white sludge that now covers the once beautiful land and has poisoned the sacred waters. The damage is so deep and all-encompassing that no amount of restoration efforts will ever bring it back to what it was before. But she insists that despair is not the answer. She writes about weaving through the fields of reeds to the mostly forgotten white sludge banks to see the restoration efforts, dredging of the sludge on one side of the lake, and prayer and dancing of the Onondaga people on the other. She writes about seeing an intrepid plant that has taken roots in the white sludge here and there. And where the plants had taken root, the soil beneath wasn't pure white anymore, but a pale gray. Little by little, the plants were changing the land. She noticed a few small anthills piled up with little white crystals and knew that the ants were doing their work to clean the soil too. I've just been struck with this image, and I think about our broken relationship with creation, kind of like Onondaga Lake, decades, centuries of toxic sludge, of capitalism and isolation from other species, and damage done by fossil fuels and chemicals and greed, making it seem impossible to restore. But despair is not the answer. Restoration after all that has been done will be slow. We'll have to be patient with ourselves, something we're not good at. And it may never be what it was in the past. But as we find ways to express gratitude to the world, as we plant gardens or work in community gardens, as some of you did yesterday, as we're mindful of our purchasing and the impacts that our dollars have, as we practice seeing the world around us as living beings who we can learn from and give back to, those tiny, intrepid plants that take root in our toxic sludge hearts will begin to change the soil, right? The small and persistent work, like the work of the ants, will begin to change the culture of our families, of our church, maybe even of our nation. I am no teacher here. I am a student, like a kindergarten student, in the work of reciprocity and relationship to all creation. I am unlearning and relearning from my native teachers, from my plant and animal teachers. And already something in me is starting to heal and expand. What tiny roots of the natural way are digging into your hearts? What soil in your mind is being remade little by little? This work, these relationships, this way of seeing the natural way brings not only healing for ourselves, but for our children. And I have to think that the work we do to repair the damage done long before, this slow and steady work of restoration, has a role to play in the healing of our ancestors as well. Jesus said, if you will make Creator's good road your first aim, he will make sure you have all you need for each day. Do not fear, little flock, for even though you are a small flock, it makes your Father's heart glad to give you the good road. The good road is here for us, beloveds. May we practice seeing it, walking it, tending it together. We have all that we need. Thanks be to God. Amen.